Okay, welcome to the 10th common session of SunoikisisDC Digital Classics 2017. I'm back. Last week, Gabriel Woodard chaired the session, but now I'm back, so thank you, Gabriel. And today we have two guests, and the common session is about developing linguistic metrics and making linguistic decisions in annotated data. We have two guests. The first one is Eleni Bozia from the University of Florida, and she's going to talk about developing linguistic metrics for the analysis of ancient Greek. And we will have an introduction into the possible usages of annotated data. And then we have a second part of this session with Anise Ferreira from the Universidade Estadual in Araraquara, São Paulo, Brazil. And this session is about discussing tree-bank annotations with Perseus, ancient Greek dependency, tree-bank, and tundra. Eleni and Anise are, well, faculty members of SunoikisisDC Digital Classics. They have been contributing to Sunoikisis since the beginning. And another important thing, they are both using Sunoikisis material in their classes. And so thank you, Anise and Eleni, for joining us again and for contributing with your work to Sunoikisis. So I think that Eleni, you can start, and welcome. You have to unmute yourself. Sorry, Eleni, because I can't do that. Okay, excellent. Now we can hear you.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be here again. When we were talking with Anise about what this presentation, what we would like it to be about, we thought that since there is an increased interest in tree banking and querying, that we should present our case studies, so more practical issues, problems that arise or research questions that we have and we want to deal with by actually using a tree bank annotation system. So today I would like to present a case study that is a personal project of mine and can showcase a different aspect of the applicability of tree bank annotation and querying. And so basically, how do you set a research question and how do you go about answering it? Let me share my slides before I begin. I would like first to give you a little bit of a background. So the tackle first the how do you form a research question. So the period that I'm working on is that of the High Empire, the Second Sophistic, first through the 3rd century CE, and particularly the revival of Atticism. So at that particular time, we know that the Roman Empire was including native Romans who were fluent in Latin and or Greek. They were it included also Greeks who were Roman citizens, other Easterners who were potentially trilingual and had also assumed Roman citizenship, even Christians who identified themselves as Roman citizens, but with a different religious identity. So we do realize that language plays a key role and is constantly reshaping not only itself, but it's also reshaping identity. The question is, we have a variety of people who, regardless of their ethnic origin, are Roman citizens and write primarily in Greek. Furthermore, all these newly molded Greco-Romans from the East, they claim a revival of traditional Hellenic language and culture and a revival of Atticism, of the traditional classical Attic dialect of the 5th and 4th century BCE. So my underlying argument is that language, since it is the most natural medium of expression and communication, it's always influencing the sociopolitical and historical status quo, both with respect to an entire community, but also on an individual basis. That is why I decided to focus my analysis on a thorough study of Attic dialect. First of all, how it was formed and structured during the 5th and 4th centuries BCE, and use this as a framework to compare it with the Attic dialect as it reappears during the period of the High Empire. And to do that, I started first with the philological background that I will take a few minutes to explain. And then I wanted to quantify somehow my philological analysis. And this is why I developed some certain computational techniques and linguistic metrics to quantify Atticism, basically. The basic question that I am trying to answer is whether Attic is still the same, or we are dealing with a revived and a reformed Atticism, as well as eventually where I want to get to is how people's choice of linguistic medium has also a bearing on their determination of identity. So, should we be talking about a revival of Atticism, or is there a reformulated Atticism in place? An amalgamation, basically, of classical Attic, but with some imperial elements as well. So, to this end, I started working with DIONYSIUS of HALICARNASSUS and his treatise on the ancient orators. Particularly, I'm working with LYSIAS, ISOCRATES, and DEMOSTHENES. And then the results and all the analysis that I did, all the comments and the things that I noticed, I tried then to see whether they apply on orators from the imperial era, and particularly Dio of Prussia, Lucian, and Aristides. So I went to the other half of the world, people who were not natively Greek. And then I proceeded with annotating the works from these 6 authors, and using machine learning algorithms in order to parameterize quantifiably these philological and stylistic attributes. So today, the second half of the presentation will be the presentation of a unified node-based metric that I developed for implementing various syntactical construction metrics, indicative of the syntactical attributes of the first part of Atticism, 5th century, 4th century Atticism, and then again, I compare these with Atticism as it reappeared in Imperial Greek authors. Finally, all the results and the metrics, the numbers basically that I got from these 6 authors, I'm using principal component analysis, PCA, to present them and make some sense out of the numbers that I got. So the philological background. Dionysius of Halicarnassus, in his treatise on the Attic orators, discusses actually with minute detailing and provides us examples of the style of Attic orators. The way that he describes them, the way he goes about it, is the same way that we are using in our classes or when we were students ourselves to talk and discuss about someone's style. Is he a simple author? Is he complicated? What about secondary clauses? What about attributives, etc.? So these are exactly the same notes, let's say, that Dionysius has for Attic orators. Another point of interest is that Dionysius himself, at the very beginning of the work, differentiates between original, primary Attic, and the reappearance of Atticism. So it's not just a modern scholarly interpretation. And I have a passage here that we ought to acknowledge a great debt of gratitude to the age in which we live, for an improvement in certain fields, etc., and particularly for a revival in the practice of civil oratory. He continues to say that from the death of Alexander of Macedon, it began to lose its spirit and gradually wither away. But then again, through the natural cycle or through human urge, etc., the ancient sober rhetoric has thereby been restored to her former rightful place of honor. In other words, he does admit that there were 2 different Atticisms, at least chronologically. So the next step was for me to take it author by author and see what sort of commentary Dionysius had on, first of all, on LYSIAS, since he is the par excellence Attic orator. Comments that he has, and I have a long list if anybody is interested. I have here on the slide a couple of them, that he displays a kind of lucidity. It's his ability to combine this lucidity with brevity of expression. And then on the second passage, he talks about purity of language, correct dialect, yes, but also presentation of ideas by means of standard, not figurative expressions, clarity, brevity, concision, terseness, vivid representation. In other words, again, all elements that we ourselves as classicists examine when we are studying the stylistic attributes of one particular author. And I have one just a representative example of an annotated tree. I annotated parts of LYSIAS's Olympian oration. Of course, I can make my tree banks available if anybody is interested in order to examine the results or the trees themselves. And we get some sense out of the sentence, the same way that we do every time that we tree bank annotate a particular author. Next, I proceeded with Isocrates, and the reason is that he seemed to be somewhere in the middle for Dionysius. So he says that his style is as pure as that of Lysias, yes, but when he continues in the second passage, he says that I pronounced both to be masters of lucidity and vividness, but found Lysias the more successful in the concise expression of ideas, and Isocrates the superior at rhetorical amplification. Again, another description that could apply to the way we process things. And this is why I decided again to work not only with Isocrates, but particularly in order to eliminate the subjective factor, to work with epidictic oratory, to keep the type of works at least the same, and hopefully the stylistic attributes close. So this is one of the trees by Isocrates. Another interesting element that we find in Dionysius' work is that not only does he comment on those particular orators, but he also rewrites several of their passages. And I thought that this would be a very representative sentence, even though there are plenty of those examples. The one that you see on your left shows the original Isocratian sentence. The second on the right is the rewrite by Dionysius. And he actually says that when he says he is Isocrates, I thought that if I should lose control of all my money, I should run the risk. It would have been simpler and more natural to say, I thought that in handling over the money, I should run the risk. So basically, the only change is that Isocrates' sentence is longer since he has a whole secondary clause in the middle, while the rewrite by Dionysius includes only one participle. Now, if you count that, and I'm going to show you the metrics that I applied on this, you actually get different numbers as to the height of the sentence. And I'll show you in a bit what I mean. And he continues again with Demosthenes. For him, Demosthenes is even more exuberant than Isocrates. That's why I thought that Isocrates was kind of in the middle. For example, in the first passage, it's very descriptive. He says that in the first place, before rounding off the first idea, a second is introduced, then a third is subjoined before the second is complete, etc., etc. And I think everybody who has ever read Demosthenes knows what Dionysius means. So you can see how all their stylistic differences are being penned down by Dionysius. And again, one of the trees you can see again the exuberance of Demosthenes. And then I moved to imperial orators, particularly Lucian, Dio, and AELIUS Aristides, since they are the ones that make throughout their works claims on atticism. However, one of the very interesting passages that led me to Lucian as a choice, one of the choices, is that he is bragging for having been praised. However, he says that when I reflected, I realized that people were not praising me for my good vocabulary, conformity to ancient canon, power of perception, Attic grace. That means that they were praising me. He continues on to say that they were praising me only because I introduced new material. So even though he is grasping to be as Attic as possible, he still claims that this is not obvious in his work. And I did the same. I don't have time to go through all these. I did the same for Dio, his 42nd oration. And I did the same for AELIUS Aristides, Encomium to Rome. Of course, they are not the only ones. We have plenty of references. I have an entire philological background and analysis for anybody who is interested. I can share it with them, including, for example, Favorinus, who wrote in Greek, but he's a Roman sophist. He comes from Gaul. He uses Attic, but he's criticized by Attic lexicographers as not being Attic enough, while those particular Attic lexicographers mention a primary Attic and Atticism and secondary Atticism. So the next logical step was to find metrics. How do I count these sentences? Some of them look longer, some of them look deeper, some of them look richer. So how do you count and put these into numbers? First of all, I annotated the trees using the ARISTIDES framework through pair seeds. And then I decided to structure the syntactically annotated sentence as a linearly ordered set of elements. So basically, S is the whole sentence, and then every N is every node, is a tree node. For me, every word is its own tree node. And T denotes the entire space of tree nodes. Therefore, like I said, each node is a tree on its own. That makes the querying simpler and the complexity, if I might say it, I might put it like this, a lot less complex. And each node now has properties that derive from the tagging that we do. So if we are looking for the children of a particular node, if we want to examine whether a particular word is an attributive. And what I have here is the first one, the children of. It gives it's the abstract representation of the function. For the second one, the is at, the space of the three nodes can be either 0 if it's not an attribute, or it can be 1 if it is an attribute, so the possible outputs. Now, in order to quantify the use of attic in this case, one needs to extract numerical descriptors. And my work explores the possibility to establish a node-based metric so as to quantify the local morphology of each individual node and ultimately put everything together to assess the complexity of the sentence. Practically, how does this work? Let's say that this is an example of a sentence, a very simple, short one. So the way that I calculated them is that I set weights for each one of the nodes, so basically for each one of the words, and the metric values, again, for each one of the words. W for the weights, very simple way, very understandable, and mu for the values. So let's say a simple metric. Let's say that we want to examine how big a sentence is word-wise. Every node is a word, so the weight is 1, and the value, since every word is a word, is 1. So 1 by 1 plus 1 by 1 plus 1 by 1. This sentence has 7 words. And this is, instead of doing that manually, the algorithm calculates that automatically. Now, how do you calculate the number of attributives? I kept, in order to keep this simpler, I kept the weight as 1 for every node. But now, if you see on the right side of the slide, the value is 0 for the nodes that are not tagged as attributives, and 1 for the nodes that are tagged as atr. So again, automatically, this is the function that I set, and the result is that this particular sentence has 2 attributives. You can do the same if you want to see, for example, how many adjectives or let's say relative participles an author is using with respect to how big his sentences are by calculating the percentage of attributives. So you do exactly the same, but this is then divided by the number of words in the sentence. So you get a better, maybe more specific appreciation of sentence and style. Number of leaves. Again, same thing. The weight, I set it to keep it similar as 1 for every node, but the metric value is 0 for the nodes that are not leaves and 1 for the nodes that are. Percentage of leaves, same calculation divided by the number of words. Now, these are simple metrics. The so-called recursive metrics, for example, we might want to study the height of the tree. Like in the case of the Isocratian sentence and the DIONYSIUS rewrite. For the height of the tree, I traverse the tree from the bottom down, up to the root. So if you count the layers, we do indeed have number 4, as the height of that tree. You can do the same for the height of the tree as percentage of the words. What would that show us if the sentence is complicated one, so that it is high, even though the words are very few? So that could potentially indicate a very long prepositional phrase, for example, or a long secondary clause. The same with the traversing from the bottom up, the size of the largest family. Again, that way we can, if we make it even more specific and we granulate it better, we can get to what types of secondary clauses we have, what types of prepositional phrases, if there are a lot of complements of whatever grammatical attribution. Size of the largest family as percentage of the words. Again, another syntactical characteristic. So how do this is the metric system. How does that get implemented? I used JavaScript. And if you see, it's it's very simple so that it will make sense to me and that I will be able to actually do it and implement it. For, let's say that we want to calculate the percentage of verbal attributives, since they will give us a longer sentence, a verbal attributive could indicate a whole relative clause versus just an attributive, an adjectival attributive that would just be one word. So if you see the first part, I'm calculating, I'm considering the weight, I'm using the function that I already said before, and now the return is 1 by, if you see the end of that command, go to the root and get the number of words, the traversing of the tree that I told you before. And then, after you have calculated the number of words, the next function is go to the node and get the relation, make sure that it is atr, it equals atr, and also the post tag, get post tag, is marked as v, which indicates a verbal attributive. In this case, return 1, else return 0. And I basically used that metric, that particular function, to calculate all the metrics that I've said so far. The metrics that I have used are the height of the tree as percentage, width of the tree as percentage, number of leaves as percentage, number of attributives as percentage, largest family size, all these as percentages, verbal attributives, percentage of the deck coordinates, that seems very interesting as well, number of nodes under atr for complexity of secondary clauses and usage of adjectives, and adjective attributives, again, as percentage of the nodes. And here is a screenshot of some of the results. So basically, I have 9 numbers. I said 9 metrics, 9 numbers for each one of the sentences that I annotated. Now, the next step, I felt that I was closer to quantifying somehow style. However, there needed to be some other sort of visualization to help me make sense out of the numbers. But for anybody who is interested to do this, before I move on and show you how I visualize the results, I have a few examples here that you can practice later. I have example sentences. You can count the number of words and the number of attributives, the number of leaves as percentage of words. And you can try that if you have your own annotated sentences. You can try those metrics, or against the backdrop of these metrics, design your own metrics that are more specific to your particular author and see whether you have any meaningful results. For that particular sentence that I told you, that we discussed before, the height of the tree for the sentence on the left, the original one, is 7, while DIONYSIUS it gives us number 5. So even a simple calculation indicates what the philological analysis has already showed us. From these 2 sentences that seem very complex, if you want to calculate a sentence width, in the case of LYSIAS' sentence, the one on upper left is 10. For LUCIAN, the number is 17. In order to visualize the results, I used PCA. I did it through MATLAB. And I got on the left side, I have the individual sentences, how they map using primary and secondary eigenaxes. And then I did the same with Gaussian distribution so that I can have basically their territory in the form of an ellipse. I know that you would need time to go through the data, but I calculated the same, again, PCA on MATLAB, and I did the same. This is for all authors. This is the dominant eigenplane examining all authors. If you notice, the attributes that are taken into consideration in each case, and you will see what I mean with the next slide, are different. The principal eigenaxis is calculated here based on the width, the family width, and what is under attributive, and the secondary eigenaxis attributive, under attributive, and family width. And give me a second, you will see what why I'm bringing this up. This is the dominant eigenplane with the works and the ellipse as well, and this is just the ellipses with every marking here indicates the average of each author. Now, they are calculated based on those particular attributes that are shown on the principal and the secondary eigenaxis. But I did the same, calculating the dominant eigenplane of each individual author. So basically, how do all the other authors look from the perspective of LYSIAS? And if you notice, not only do the ellipses change, but also the attributes that are considered for the principal eigenaxis and the secondary eigenaxis are always different, which means that there are different characteristics that are more important to LYSIAS than the others. And I did the same for ISOCRATES, DEMOSTHENES. Again, if you have time or if you have questions later on, I'll be happy to answer them. But if you are able to see, again, the attributives for the principal and secondary eigenaxis keep changing for each author. I did it for LUCIAN, DION, which looks really maybe the most different of all, and AELIUS ARISTIDES. Basically, going through these results, what I realized is that there are, even though the metrics that I set may not be very, very detailed, because it was, the project is still in its experimental phase, but still it was quite clear that the three classical Attic orators, LYSIAS, ISOCRATES, and DEMOSTHENES, they are closer together. They tend to form their own group. LUCIAN, DION, and AELIUS ARISTIDES, you can see them being separated in a way, but you can also see coinciding ellipses. For example, in the case of LUCIAN, who is said to be imitating LYSIAS, even though they don't coincide entirely. So again, all the philological considerations, in addition to Dionysius's appreciations of the orators, they seem to be able to be quantified through that. Even though I intend to design later on more specific metrics, I do believe that atticism certainly reappears under the High Empire. And although it retains several forms, a patina of tradition and classicizing attitudes, however, its authors and creators have blown a different air of linguistic, cultural, intellectual, social hybridity. And I'm hoping that by establishing more specific metrics, that I will be able to showcase that even more clearly. This was the first part, and now I have with me one of my students from the computer science department, Timothy Russell Wagner, and he's going to talk to you about how we are trying to make this metric, node-based metric system that now resides only in my laptop, how we are trying to make it available so that other people can also use it, use these metrics, perhaps even add their own metrics.
Okay, hello, my name is Timothy Russell Wagner, as Professor Bozia said, and I'm just going to be giving a quick overview of the work that I've been doing with her for the past few months to kind of bring this automatic system that will go ahead and do a lot of the data processing and data visualization that was discussed in her part of the presentation. So here's what you get when you kind of go to the, open up the application. You're going to have the sidebar on the left, which is going to control the tree banks and metrics that you have loaded at any given time. And on the right is sort of the visual side of things. It's going to hold all the visualizations in addition to the console you see here. The console is just a secondary way to interact with everything, but everything that can be done inside the console can be done outside and vice versa. So here's what the sidebar looks like when you have it filled out with sort of a larger collection of tree banks and metrics. And you can see that we have the ability to dynamically select and unselect, unload tree banks, etc. And this is just sort of to give you a greater granularity of what you can do, and hopefully allow you to iterate quickly on what metrics you might want to use at a given time, what tree banks you want to use for a given application, and so on. So I'm just going to quickly go through each of the visualizations that we can generate. So this is just a basic table, more like a spreadsheet than a table, with the metrics up top, the tree bank information on the left side, and otherwise just a whole lot of data. But as you can already tell, there is a problem with this in that it's not very distilled. There's just too much to comprehend. So we've gone through a couple of visualizations, the first of which is just a simple bar chart. Again, you have the tree bank information on the left. This is obviously good for univariate analysis. And here we have it set up to just view the number of nodes, but we have the ability to instantly switch just via drop down to any metric that you want. You can also sort if you happen to make a metric that has an interesting progression when it's sorted, then that's certainly an option. Moving on from that, additionally we have the ability to dynamically color code and bin each of these, all of the works that you put into the system by author. So here you can see each of these different colors represents a different author. But one of the problems with the bar chart, which you can see with this, is that it just kind of falls off the bottom of the screen because it's not a very condensed form of data presentation. So to handle that, we moved to a scatter plot, which can definitely help kind of condense everything. You can see on the top left, we have the ability to select which metrics we have on each axis, and also on the left you can see the legend that you would expect with the scatter plot connecting the colors to the authors. But there is a second layer of interactivity with the scatter plot, and the fourth visualization that I'll show in a second. So when you scroll over any point in the scatter plot, it's actually going to come up with a little tooltip that gives you information about the tree bank, the author, title, section number, sentence number, as well as the actual values of the metric at that point. And it's also going to bring all of the points by the same author to the forefront. It's going to embolden them, as well as lower the opacity of all the other points that are not by that author. And that's just sort of to help bring the related data to prominence. In addition to that, you can see that with this, there is a very dense amount of data, and even with some of the yellow points there, you can see that it sort of is still really thick, even though the opacity has been lowered. So we have the ability to toggle on and off different points as you wish. So here we have LYSIAS and Thucydides both toggled off, so there's no green and yellow points, but all the other authors are still there, and you can still interact with those, obviously, as you would previously. Additionally, if you highlight over one of the authors in the legend, it's going to highlight all of their points the same way that it would if you highlighted over one of their points within the plot. In addition to all of that, we also provide some basic summary statistics that may be of use in addition to the legend there. So moving on to kind of the magnum opus sort of this application is the principal component analysis. So in the top left, you can see that we have the ability to change what we're drawing an ellipse for, and the options there are for each author, for each title, and for each section. And those three are actually going to change kind of the context sensitivity of the visualization, which I'll get into in a second. But you can see on the legend, we also have that sort of expanded to contain more information as well. You can see the ellipses, and you can interact with this the same way that you could on the scatter plot. If you highlight over the box, it's going to highlight all of the points by that same author. And if you highlight over the ellipses, it's going to highlight all of the ellipses by that author, which we'll get into more. But as I said, you can interact with this the same way that you can with the scatter plot. And so we can turn off all the points, or we can also turn off the ellipses as well if you so desire. You want to hone in on just a couple of the ellipses, then you can certainly do that. Now, the context-sensitive portion of this. So we can draw an ellipse for each author, each title, each section. And that's going to change what information you get when you highlight over an ellipse. So on the left, we have the authors, and you can see we're highlighting over the Lucian ellipse, and that's going to highlight all of the data by Lucian, no matter what work it's from, what section it's from, etc. In the top right, we have the title. It's sorted by title. So the highlighted points there are by Isocrates and from Panegyricus, but the sort of faded out ellipse behind with the other data is also by Isocrates. It's just from a different title. And that same thing applies to the section where all of the data in there is by LYSIAS, but only the highlighted stuff is from Against Pancleon in section 116. However, other data may also be from Against Pancleon, and some data may be from just other works entirely. But the idea with that is just to give you the ability to not only see the differences between each author, but also maybe between different titles, also all written by the same author, or between different sections within the same title by the author. Maybe somebody is mimicking styles over each section, or just evolves as they're writing it. But that's all I have time for today. So thank you for your time, and thanks, Professor Bozia.
Let me stop sharing the screen.
Okay, thank you both for this great presentation. So it's great to visualize data. So now we can really visualize information about these authors. But now we can move to Anise.
Hello.
Hello, Anise.
Hi. Hi. Congratulations. The visualization of the data is fantastic. I liked it very much, and I'm looking forward to use it. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
May I begin my presentation?
Yes, of course, Anise. Yes. You can share your screen. Yeah.
Okay. But first of all, I'd like to thank Eleni and Monica for this opportunity of presenting this session today. And I will share my screen right away. It's not happening, is it?
I can see your screen.
Yes, because my screen is what you are. Okay. Here. Nothing. Where is my here? Okay, now.
Yes, okay, now we can see your slides. Good.
Let me okay. Here. In this part of the session, I will show some examples of how we've been searching and querying Perseus' ancient Greek dependence tree bank using Tundra with undergraduate classes at UNESP. We can use tree bank annotated corpus to answer and solve problems in learning Greek syntax and tree bank annotation. Manual tree bank annotation is a way to register our reading syntactically, a process that's not always clear to the annotator or when the ancient Greek is the language, even if guidelines are available. Being able to search, query, and compare similar language cases of annotation in a database provides comparisons and opportunities for language discussions and decision-making in annotation process, especially when we find different possible annotations to the same lemma, the word, in similar sentences. This presentation is addressed especially to those who study Greek, but also to those who could use this experience to explore tree-bank databases in their native modern languages. So what is Tundra? Tundra stands for Tübingen Annotated Data Retrieval Tool. It is a web application designed for searching in tree banks. It's a part of CLARIN-D project, an infrastructure supported by the German Federal Ministry for Education and Research, integrated with web language tool. The ancient Greek dependence tree bank is searchable on Tundra. Martin's, its interface, Tundra's interface follows the principle of least surprise in software interface design. I like that very much. And was influenced by elements of Nardi's activity-centered design. It's an application that is similar to ZEUXIS Anise, which some of you might be familiar with, although Anise has a smaller corpus. How to gain access? First of all, I would like to say that I tried to capture the web screens and put them on the slides as much as possible, because I have noticed that on YouTube transmissions of web navigation, the images became blurry. Sometimes it's difficult to read. Hangout images are better, but live transmissions on YouTube don't have very clear images. Slides available, everybody can download and see the images. So how to gain access? Tundra is available via website, and you have the link on screen. You have to create an account on CLARIN Service Provider Federation. There is a list of the university servers, and you have to check if your university is on the list. My university is not. So my account was provided by clarin.edu. However, you have to pay attention to the entry web page, which is not always the link I was showing before. See that link, tübingen.de /Tundra. It works well if your browser was not connected before to the servers. If you were connected and the login expired or timeout, you have to go to the wiki page and start from there. The page you are watching now is the wiki page where the link is. The wiki page address is the bigger one, and once there you click on Tundra's link, then you see the list of university servers in the image below. Receive the login page, right? Is the homepage of, and you can open the database you want. We want to open Perseus Greek Dependence Tree Bank. You can use the button load the tree bank or open the file menu as shown in the picture. You'll see a list of tree banks, and attention people in Brazil, you can find even a Brazilian Portuguese tree bank there. So we are interested in Greek, so I choose the Greek tree bank from Perseus project. Under Help menu, you will find instruction on general query syntax and also a link to this particular tree bank, which is shown in the next slide. Now, you can see a very rough copy of that page where there is an introduction on the tree bank, the ancient Greek and Latin dependence tree bank, with the link to data and the works. The works listed here have links to the tree bank on Perseid's platform. So if you can want to check the tree bank inside the Perseid's platform, you can use those links there. This next slide shows the main symbols used to make queries to the tree bank. I believe the Tundra syntax is much simpler than that use. The argument is set inside the square brackets. If you search for an inflected word, you use word command. If you want to a lemma to find an inflected form, you use lemma. You can search for part of speech using POS. And the grammatical category of the word. If you are looking for syntactic functions, you search using the AGDT tags with edge. You can combine arguments, and combining is easy too. The symbols are ampersand for and, the vertical bar for or, and the exclamation mark for exclusion or not. The three relationship symbols are the sign greater than for immediate child relation, the same symbol with an asterisk for a distant child. The adjacent word, and an asterisk means a word with any distance from the first word. Find more detailed examples in Giuseppe's Google Doc. Its link is on the slide. How and what to search? We can search for inflection categories: number, person, genders, tense, person, mood, voice, case, and degree. Example: case equals dative. Or we can search for POS, part of speech, noun, verb, adjective, adverb, article, particle, conjunction, adposition, pronoun, interjection, numeral, punctuation. We can search for morphological features using the first letter of each part of speech or category of inflection. For example, SP, PD for singular, stands for singular, plural, and dual. For those who want to look for syntactic function or edges, are not familiar with AGT guidelines, it's necessary to follow the descriptions and examples of both guidelines. Provided by Giuseppe Celano, and the previous version provided by Bauman and Crane. You have the links there. Now, I will start to, I'm going to focus on some cases of tree bank annotations using Tundra. First one is a combination of particles which sometimes are hard to translate and require to think a little bit to decide how to annotate. I chose a case of the ala, which means in general, but combined with another particle, which can indicate a question and not always has a clear translation. With other particles too. I focused on the combination in questions. You can see that the query was made using word and token. for the interrogation mark in Greek, that means a punctuation. When searching the tree bank, we will find two different annotations. E is annotated as Z, dependent on Allah as AUXY. Both in the other, both particles are annotated as Y, dependent on the verb. Lines indicate to use AUXY to sentence adverbs, which mean a particle that modifies the sentence as a whole. And AUXZ is reserved for logical operators that are adverbs, such as those meaning not, even, and also, and is attached to the word which it modifies, and emphasizes one specific word in the sentence. So we have here, you see an example of the first case where Allah was annotated as AUXY, and is AUXZ, dependent on Allah. Let's check the translations. What? Are you gladdened at heart by the present news? This might 1926. Giz. Mas está satisfeita com as novidades? In French, mais peux-tu espérer après cette nouvelle? My grammar 2654 says the meaning of this particle may be an objection with surprise or astonishment. Which translation would be closer to the meaning projected in the tree bank annotation? For me, that annotation is okay because the dependent particle gives the tone of objection for the sentence. Now, let's see another case, another example of annotation. In this sentence, both particles were annotated with AUXY as two sentence adverbs, perhaps, each one conserving its general meaning. Let's check the translations. English, what? Are you insane, poor girl? English translate, what? Are you mad, poor girl? I don't know if there is a big difference between insane and mad, but we have the two translations in English. Would this annotation be indicating that the two particles mean different emphasis, as in, what, are you really mad? Can asseverative according to Smith, and just a question indicator according to Smith grammar, which would be somehow independent and related to the entire sentence. So here we would have as a meaning surprise, and meaning question according to Smith in 2786 paragraph. Another example of annotation involving Allah again is with Kai in an expression that is used in many languages, not only but also. That annotation seems to be much easier to comprehend, but may raise some doubts. First, because the particle Kai sometimes has also a function, the function of a coordinator, though not here. Second, because we became used to associate the two words together, giving the impression that one of the particles would be dependent on the other. In fact, here chi is emphasizing the second element of the coordination. So we have an example here. Let's see the example on tundra. In this predicate nominal sentence, we have in the monon, that means not only, which is the first part of the coordination, two p-noms, predicate nominals, and the negative particle not is annotated as an AUXZ dependent on monon. And on the chi, the other chi, having the function of a coordinator, because both predicates are related to monon. Since monon is emphasizing both adjectives, monon is annotated as AUXZ as well, the I of the second sentence, because it means also. As in the predicate nominal of the coordinated sentence, kai cressimon, that is also useful. A balance and symmetry on that. So, AUXC, mono is also AUXC attached to chi, and ELYSIAS coordinator, and the other chi is attached to Simon. So I'm going to rush a little bit. And another particle may cause difficulties in annotation is the modal an. I brought examples here of the use of it with optative mood. I use the command lemma for an because of the change of accent in the sentence. These examples show two annotations of the particle. One is AUXC again, and the other AUXY. It seems that AUXZ is used when the particle and the mood are in a courteous formula, used to soften a statement or a request. And AUXY is applied to the potential meaning of the mood, that is the meaning of possibility or likelihood. We have, let's see the trees on tundra, a very short sentence first with a negative particle, and the verb in optative mood. In Portuguese, the translation shows the mood. I wouldn't be amazed. English and French translations use the formula, an expression denoting agreement with affirmative sentence. It seems to me a polite use of the particle with this mode. The example brings the use of AUXY as a notation for the particle. In English and Portuguese translations, in those translations, the potential meaning seems to be clear by the use of the verb can, which means poder in Portuguese, and we use the tense called the futuro do pretérito, which is used in conditionals too, when it corresponds to would. And here it corresponds to could. The next case the next is, case refer to word repetitions. Text is not in the list. I have two examples of repetitions, one with the same word in dative case, and the other one has just an repeated noun. Both examples are from ISOCRATES. The first one has two repetitions, and the first same word is annotated with AUXY. The second example confirms the annotation. We see that in this annotation, that this annotation follows the same rule in the guidelines for repetitions of coordination particles. So here the sentence, this one has the two repetitions, one of the noun object in dative case, Dieu, English translation is by strange, oh, Portuguese translation, com novas dores, com novas dores. The next slide, here the repeated word is a noun object. The English translation for AELIUS, sing the song of woe, the song of woe. The Portuguese translation, tristezas, canta tristezas, sorrows, sing sorrows. You can see the arch in the image. And next one, a common repetition, the repetition of the article. Yeah. But it's not an adjacent repetition, as in the example, to polemo, to prostus, athenaios. We have a typical Greek usage of our article repetition that designates qualifier to the noun after the first article, which would mean here about the war, about the one against the Athenians. In this case, the second article is attached to the noun polemos. This means that the idea of the repetition of the noun is a kind of emphasis on the qualifier. Not on the next, on the attribute. So the next one example is that of multi-word expression. There are a few of them annotated in the corpus, and I brought one from the fable where tamalista is annotated as a multi-word expression, dependent on malista. The meaning, although they perform honest to the maximum, is from the cat, doctor, and the chicken fable. So the meaning of the sentence is that the bad people don't go unnoticed by the good ones, even if showing their best. 3, we have the 3 where ta is attached, the article is attached to malista and receives the tag MWE. The last example I brought refers to the use of a participle with article. There are several situations where participles have articles. The case I brought show a situation where the article has the main syntactic function, being the head of the participle, and another case where the participle is the head of the article. So this screen shows the sentence extracted from Plutarchus. The article ho is the subject of the main verb, elege. It has another participle which is an attribute, and there is another participle annotated as an adverb. The reading of this annotated tree would be the one among young men responding, right? The English official one translation in English is then the choir of young men would respond. Now, the other case, it's a case where the participle is the head of the article, which is annotated as a regular attribute, meaning the listeners to Themistocles were convinced and, or trusted him. However, we can see through Portuguese translation that we could annotate the article as the head of the participle. the English translation reduced the sentence, combining listening and being convinced into trusted words. So, em português, e eles, ouvindo Temístocles pela amizade que lhe tinham, a deixavam-se persuadir. That sentence translates into English, and they listening to Temístocles, let being persuaded through their friendship for him. Is a literal translation. And the English translation is, at first the Lacedaemonians trusted the words of Temístocles through their friendship for him, right? So we can see the difference in translations. So what I mean for this is that the way you annotate the tree bank, the sentence, you can have an impact on translation, right? So we are doing these exercises, trying to see the differences among annotations and the cases which are not very always clear and annotator. So I finished my presentation.
Anise,
I have to leave.
No, thank you very much.
To leave here.
This session is really dense, so do we have questions? We also have questions in the audience. Well, I have two questions. The first one for Eleni and team. So, well, thank you for the visualizations. Of course, it was a dense presentation. We have to think about that. But Eleni, you said that you want to work on your metric system and to improve that, if I understood correctly. I know that this is a big question, but for our audience, what do you mean by that? What are your goals? You said that, but can you summarize a bit that, and what are your further goals?
I want to try and implement these more syntactical characteristics through these metrics. So going through whatever we do when we analyze syntactically a sentence in a classics course, and we go through subject, verb, object, and the rest of the information, if I can put all these into metrics. And then going through the next step would be, but again, in the future, the next step would be to find particular formations that appear in certain authors and see whether we find them somewhere else.
Okay.
But this process has to do, the metrics that I use, they are not only general because it was experimental, they are generic as well, in the sense that they can capture the description of a sentence in any author. With the exception of the particle de, I think that the rest give us a very good appreciation of complexity, of the basic general complexity.
Okay.
That, and this is why I wanted to make this. I want to make this more available, is so that people can create more specific metrics, either for the author that they are working on or for the literary genre that they are working on, and kind of tailor making their metrics. So that's the idea.
Okay, excellent. So this is really great. And a question about teaching, because, well, Tim, you are a student from the computer science, if I understand. So this is really great because we can see real digital classics. So combining specific Greek authors with specific questions, because Eleni, you have very detailed questions, but we have students from computer science. I don't know, Tim, if you know Greek but yeah. It's so, how is your experience, just to have witness from a student?
So I'm actually more on the Latin side of things. I took a course with Professor Bozia that did kind of explore some of the Greek texts translated. And this, just working on this has been really, really engaging honestly probably one of the best projects that I've worked on, just because it's not just more of the same simple programming stuff. It's more of an applied thing and something that I'm interested in on top of that. So it's made it a fun experience.
And now I'm here, Monica, so maybe you want to ask him when I'm not prepared.
Yeah.
Of course. We have the official version. But well, I could see the results, so it worked in the end. So I think, no, thank you. This is important because this is our effort in our Sunoikisis community. And in Leipzig, I have in my class both humanists and computer scientists and students. So this is important to see other classes with this mixed audience, and this is important. And it's working. So you are a great example. So thank you very much, Eleni and team. Well, and now, if we don't have other questions from our audience, I have another question for Anise. So, well, Anise, thank you very much for showing us how to use Tundra, which is an important tool. And again, I have a question about teaching. So in your class outline, you write that you are using Tundra with in your undergraduate class. So how you do that? I mean, so do you have students searching in Tundra? I think you use examples to teach them.
Yeah.
To teach them Greek syntax and yeah.
In fact, only few of them have the access to Tundra, and they do that. But in class, I show how to do it and show different examples. I search the database with them and ask questions about why there are differences, what the grammar says about each case. Is it possible it would be possible to do differently? So it's a kind of input to the class. I can't use all the time. I used sometimes last year, but I think it's very helpful for teaching. For the teacher, is a very good instrument, and then we can search also inside Persades, the tree bank. So it's very good.
Okay,
for me.
Yeah. No, imagine. And I think, at least as far as we know also from other students, it's important for them nowadays to visualize. So if they can visualize the syntax, they can understand better. So for example, the examples you showed, so Greek syntax is complex, but thanks to these tools, they can visualize really problems. And then translation, so you add the translations in the slides, so really to see differences in different languages.
Tried to make it accessible to a bigger audience in Brazil, for Portuguese speakers, and with this translation it's better.
Yeah, sure. And if possible, as you know, we need more data, not only annotating Greek, but we need training data for translation alignment. So of course, another big need of the community of digital humanities and digital classics is to produce alignments. In this case, it's Portuguese. This is another good assignment for your students.
I'm collecting my Portuguese alignments to give them to Tariq.
Yes, yeah.
For me. But I noticed something that some work at the same time with alignment and tree bank, but when with not experienced students, we begin with alignment because they have some translations at hand, and then with tree banking. But when they have more experience, they can create, annotate a tree bank to read, to decide how to read, and decide and refine the translation.
Okay, yeah, this is good. So they start with the translation, they tree-bank, and then they go back to translation. This is very, very important. So, and it's true. So starting with the translation to learn Greek in this case, and then moving to tree-bank, and then of course, when you start tree-banking, you have to go back to the translation alignment. And both of them, they are not easy, definitely, even if now we have these tools, we know that. So it seems easy, but it's not. When you start tree-banking or aligning, you know that many problems arise, also because every annotator in the end can, especially for translation alignment, can follow different criteria. So that's why another important part is to have a documentation. So for every aligner. So when you align something, trying to be consistent and then to document your decisions. Well, thank you very much. Now our time is over. So really it was a very dense session, but very clear. So thank you both. And next week we will talk again about the translation, because we have another session about Herodotus. Last time we had a session about reading Herodotus in Egypt, but next week it will be reading Herodotus in Tbilisi in Georgia. And another important thing for our audience, so starting from this week, as you know, so the time of our common session is 5 p.m. But now we are in Central European summer time, so this is important for avoiding confusion. So in Europe now we are in the summer daylight saving, just to be clear, and in the class outline you will see CEST, so 5 p.m. but Central European summer time. Anyway, thank you very much. See you next week for this session. You know, you have the class outline. Eleni team and Anise, they put their slides. We have a detailed description of the session, many readings and exercises. So thank you very much, and see you next week.
Thank you,
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.